Welcome to the deep dive. Today you could say we're taking a quantum leap into the world of biology.
Hmm.
You gave us this stack of articles and book excerpts all about quantum biology.
Right.
And frankly, some of this stuff is just wild.
It really is. It pushes the boundaries of what we thought we knew about life.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about birds possibly navigating using quantum entanglement,
Yeah.
our noses maybe sniffing out smells with quantum tunneling.
Hmm.
Like it's like the stuff of science fiction,
Right.
but it might actually be real.
That's the exciting part. Quantum biology is a young field,
Yeah.
but it's already challenging some fundamental assumptions.
Okay. Before we get too deep into those mind-bending possibilities,
Sure.
maybe we should take a step back.
Okay.
What even defines life? We all know it when we see it,
Yeah,
but putting it into words is tricky.
it really is.
It's a question that has puzzled thinkers for centuries.
Yeah, for centuries.
I mean, Aristotle believed a soul was what animated life, but that's obviously not a very scientific explanation.
Right.
I mean, for a long time, the essence of life seemed beyond our understanding.
Hmm.
Then we discovered DNA,
Yeah.
and it felt like we'd cracked the code, the blueprint of life,
Right.
the instruction manual for building an organism.
It was a huge breakthrough, no doubt.
It was.
But even with DNA, the mystery of life's origins,
Yeah.
what truly separates living from non-living, hasn't been fully solved.
So is that where quantum mechanics comes in? Is that the missing piece of the puzzle?
It's a fascinating possibility.
This is where I start to get a little lost.
Well, quantum mechanics, the science of the very small,
Okay.
deals with particles that can be in two places at once, tunnel through barriers,
Ah,
and stay connected over vast distances.
right.
At first, it seemed totally irrelevant to biology.
Yeah, the quantum world is all about delicate states and isolated particles.
Right.
Life, on the other hand, is messy and chaotic.
Hmm.
Our cells are bustling with activity.
Mm.
How could those delicate quantum effects possibly survive in that environment?
That was the prevailing view for a long time.
Yeah.
But then Erwin Schrödinger, the famous physicist,
Oh, yeah.
who gave us the thought experiment about a cat in a box,
Right.
proposed a radical idea in his book, What is Life?
Okay, I've heard of Schrödinger's cat,
Yeah.
but I don't really understand what it's about.
It's a thought experiment that illustrates the strangeness of quantum superposition.
Oh.
But more importantly for our discussion, Schrödinger argued that life's order actually depends on quantum mechanics operating at the molecular level.
Wow.
He was decades ahead of his time.
So you're saying that all this complex life on Earth
Yeah.
could be relying on the weirdness of the quantum world?
There's growing evidence to suggest just that.
Wow.
Let's take enzymes, for example.
Okay.
These are the workhorses of our cells,
Yeah.
speeding up chemical reactions that are vital to life.
Right.
We used to think they were just catalysts,
Mm-hmm.
working with regular chemistry.
So what's changed?
Recent research suggests that enzymes might be exploiting quantum tunneling to perform their jobs with incredible efficiency.
Hold on, back up a second.
Sure.
Quantum tunneling. Like digging a tunnel underground.
Not quite digging tunnels,
Okay.
but the concept is kind of similar. Imagine trying to roll a ball over a hill.
Yeah.
Classically, you need enough energy to push it all the way up and over.
Mm-hmm.
But in the quantum world, there's a chance that the ball could just tunnel right through the hill as if it wasn't even there.
Okay. That is bizarre.
It is.
And you're saying enzymes are doing this with particles in our cells?
Exactly. One well-studied example is collagenase,
Okay.
an enzyme that breaks down collagen,
Uh-huh.
the protein that holds our tissues together.
Right.
It uses a zinc atom to help protons tunnel through an energy barrier,
Hmm.
making the reaction much faster than it would be otherwise.
Wait, so the very structure of our bodies,
Yeah.
the way we break down and rebuild tissues, could rely on quantum tunneling.
It's possible.
That's mind-blowing.
And it's not just collagenase.
Oh,
Respiration, the process of getting energy from food,
Right.
might also rely on quantum tunneling for electron transport.
Really?
We're talking about fundamental processes that power all life as we know it.
Okay, this is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask about photosynthesis.
Sure.
Plants turning sunlight into energy is already amazing.
It is.
But is there even more to the story, a quantum twist?
Let's take a journey inside a plant cell.
Okay.
Zooming in on a chloroplast where photosynthesis happens,
All right.
you'd see stacks of thylakoid membranes,
Okay.
and within them, chlorophyll molecules capturing sunlight.
I remember from biology class that chlorophyll absorbs photons,
Yeah,
creating bundles of energy called excitons, right?
that's right.
Those excitants have to reach a reaction center to be converted into usable energy.
Right.
But they need to get there fast before their energy dissipates.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And here's where it gets quantum.
Scientists have found evidence of quantum coherence in this energy transfer process. It's as if the excitants are exploring multiple paths simultaneously,
Oh, wow.
like they're surfing on light waves to find the most efficient way to the reaction center.
So are you saying that plants are using quantum mechanics to optimize their energy production?
It's a possibility.
Are they like tiny quantum computers?
That's a fascinating way to think about it.
Yeah.
Initially, researchers at MIT scoffed at the idea of plants using quantum mechanics,
Oh, really?
but the evidence was too compelling to ignore.
So if plants might be harnessing quantum mechanics, what about animals? What about us? I know from the material you sent me that there's some mind-boggling stuff about animal senses,
Right.
potentially tapping into the quantum realm.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
We're just starting to uncover the incredible ways that animals sense the world around them.
Yeah.
And some of these abilities seem to defy classical explanations.
Like what?
Anemone fish, for example.
Yeah.
Those cute little guys from Finding Nemo
Right.
can be swept away from their host anemones,
Yeah.
but somehow find their way back home.
So how do they do it? Is it some kind of sixth sense?
It seems to be related to magnetoreception,
Okay.
the ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah.
And it's not just anemone fish.
Yeah.
Birds, butterflies,
Yeah.
even some bacteria seem to have this ability.
Wow. So how does magnetoreception actually work? Is it some kind of biological compass?
One theory suggests that animals use radical pairs,
Okay.
which are molecules with unpaired electrons that are sensitive to magnetic fields. Light hits a molecule in the eye, creating these radical pairs,
Okay.
and their state is affected by the Earth's magnetic field.
So they're picking up on subtle changes in these radical pairs to navigate.
Exactly. There's a protein called cryptochrome
Okay.
found in the eyes of many animals, including birds and butterflies, that's thought to be involved.
Wait a minute. Isn't cryptochrome also involved in regulating our circadian rhythms? Our internal clocks. So it might play a role in both sensing magnetic fields
They could.
and keeping our biological rhythms in sync.
That's right. One protein, multiple functions.
Wow.
And there's growing evidence to support cryptochrome's role in magnetoreception.
Really?
Scientists have even shown that disrupting the quantum spin states of molecules in Arabidopsis thaliana plants
Wow.
disrupts their sensitivity to magnetic fields.
It's amazing how these seemingly unrelated processes might be interconnected.
It is.
So magnetoreception seems pretty wild.
Yeah.
But could our sense of smell also be quantum?
Let's talk about Luca Turin,
Okay.
a biophysicist who has a very controversial theory about smell.
Okay.
He argues that our noses might be using quantum tunneling to detect the vibrations of odor molecules.
Hold on. I thought quantum tunneling happened at tiny distances,
Right.
like in enzymes.
Yeah.
How could it possibly be involved in something as complex as smell?
It does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But Turin has some interesting observations.
Okay. Like what?
He pointed out that the only non-sulfur molecules that smell like rotten eggs, which are usually caused by sulfur compounds, are boranes. And guess what?
What?
Boranes happen to have a similar vibrational frequency to the sulfur-hydrogen bond,
Real.
the one that gives rotten eggs their characteristic stink.
So our noses might be acting like tiny tuning forks,
It's possible.
picking up on the vibrational frequencies of molecules via quantum tunneling.
It's a fascinating idea.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
But I have to admit, I'm still a little skeptical.
You're right to be skeptical.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating theory, but there's still a lot of debate. But the fact that we're even having this conversation
Right.
shows how much our understanding of biology has shifted. We're starting to see the quantum world as not just abstract physics,
Nah.
but something that could be intimately connected to the very fabric of life.
Speaking of the fabric of life, I want to touch on genes and mutations.
Okay.
Mutations are the raw material of evolution. The random changes in DNA that can lead to new traits.
Right.
But what if they're not so random after all?
Interesting question.
What if quantum mechanics is influencing evolution itself?
Now we're getting into truly uncharted territory.
We are.
John Joe McFadden, one of the authors of the book you sent us,
Yeah.
was intrigued by the work of John Cairns,
Okay.
a geneticist who found evidence that bacteria might be able to direct mutations to adapt to their environment.
That seems to go against the whole idea of random mutations.
It does.
The cornerstone of evolution.
Exactly. It's a radical idea.
It is.
McFadden proposed that quantum mechanics might allow cells to choose beneficial mutations, especially when they're under stress.
So it's like the cells are playing the lottery.
Yeah.
But they can somehow influence the odds in their favor.
In a way, yes.
Wow.
McFadden's model involves the quantum superposition of protons in DNA.
Okay.
These protons can be in multiple states at once.
Right.
And this could give cells a way to explore different mutational possibilities simultaneously.
Wow.
And then collapse into the one that's most advantageous for survival.
So the very process of evolution, the driving force behind all the diversity of life on Earth, could be influenced by quantum mechanics. Now, that is a deep dive.
It is.
I think we need to take a break here and process all this information.
Sounds good.
We've covered a lot of ground, from enzymes to photosynthesis, to the mind-boggling idea that quantum mechanics could be shaping evolution.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we left off with this incredible idea that quantum mechanics might be influencing the very process of evolution.
Yeah, it's one of the most exciting and challenging frontiers in science.
Right.
Trying to unravel how those quantum rules operate in the messy, complex world of living organisms.
Right. And we promised to look at some of the research behind these ideas, the experiments that are putting these mind-boggling theories to the test.
Right.
So where do we start?
Well, let's pick up with John Joe McFadden's model of adaptive mutation, where he suggested that quantum mechanics might allow cells to, in a sense, choose beneficial mutations when they're stressed.
Right.
It's a bold claim.
Yeah.
And not everyone agrees with it.
I can imagine. It seems to go against everything we thought we knew about evolution.
Right.
That mutations are random. So how does he explain this apparent ability of cells to influence their own genetic destiny?
He argues that it comes down to the quantum superposition of protons in DNA.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about particles being in multiple states at once?
Right, yeah.
Well, McFadden believes that this applies to those protons too.
Okay, so the protons are in this kind of quantum limbo,
right,
existing in multiple states simultaneously. But how does that translate into a cell choosing a specific mutation?
It's like the cell is exploring many potential paths at once.
Yeah.
Thanks to those superposed protons. But it doesn't collapse into a particular mutation until it encounters an environment that favors that specific change.
So the environment is actually playing a role in determining which mutation becomes reality.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It's as though the environment is acting like a measuring device, forcing the cell to choose a path from all the possibilities laid out by quantum mechanics.
So it's not just random chance. It's almost like the cell is getting feedback from its surroundings and using that information to guide its evolution. But is there any actual experimental evidence to support this?
McFadden and his colleagues have been developing mathematical models and running computer simulations to explore this idea. They're looking for ways to quantify how quantum effects could play out in real biological systems.
That makes sense. But what about the other scientists? What did they think about this quantum-guided evolution? I imagine there's a lot of skepticism.
There is. A lot of scientists are hesitant to embrace this idea.
Right.
They point out that the warm, bustling environment of a cell would likely disrupt those delicate quantum states.
Right.
Before they could have any significant effect on evolution.
That's the decoherence problem we talked about earlier, right?
Basically.
The idea that interactions with the environment would essentially destroy those quantum superpositions.
Right.
So how do McFadden and his supporters counter that argument?
They argue that there might be mechanisms within the cell that protect those quantum effects, at least for long enough to be biologically relevant. It's still very much an open question, a puzzle that scientists are actively trying to solve.
It sounds like we're just beginning to scratch the surface of this incredible possibility.
We are.
Okay, I want to shift gears for a moment and get back to our senses.
Okay.
We were talking about Luca Turin's theory.
Right.
That our sense of smell might involve quantum tunneling.
Yeah.
It's such a wild idea.
It is.
But is there any evidence to back it up?
Well, remember that Turin's theory hinges on the idea that our noses are detecting the vibrations of odor molecules, not just their shape, and that those vibrations are somehow triggering quantum tunneling events.
Right. And he had that interesting observation about boranes.
Yeah.
Those non-sulfur molecules that smell like rotten eggs.
Right.
But that was more of a correlation than a cause and effect explanation, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there have been more rigorous experiments
Okay.
specifically designed to test his theory. The key prediction is that molecules with similar vibrational frequencies should smell alike,
Okay.
even if their shapes are completely different.
So how do you even test something like that? Do you just give people vials of different molecules and ask them if they smell the same?
That's one way to do it,
Yeah.
but scientists have gotten even more creative
Okay.
and used isotopes in their experiments.
Okay, remind me again, what's an isotope?
Isotopes are atoms of the same element that have different numbers of neutrons. So they have the same chemical properties,
Okay.
but slightly different masses.
And that difference in mass is key because it affects how the atoms vibrate, right?
Exactly. If Turin's theory is right, swapping a regular hydrogen atom in an odor molecule with its heavier isotope deuterium should change the molecule's smell.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So did they just give people deuterated molecules to smell and see if they noticed a difference?
There have been several studies using various approaches,
Okay.
including some really cool experiments with fruit flies.
Fruit flies.
Remember how we talked about fruit flies and their sensitivity to light thanks to cryptochrome?
Yeah, those flies are light-sensitive superstars.
They are.
But what does that have to do with smell?
Well, it turns out that fruit flies also have a pretty sophisticated sense of smell.
Okay.
Researchers took advantage of this by using a device called a T-maze.
A tea maze, like a maze shaped like a T.
Exactly. Flies are released at the bottom of the T and then have to choose between two different airstreams,
Okay.
each carrying a different odor molecule.
So they can see if the flies have a preference for one smell over the other. Clever. Yeah.
In these experiments, one arm of the T-maze contained a normal odor molecule, and the other arm had the same molecule, but with some of its hydrogen atoms replaced with deuterium.
So if Turin's theory is correct, and flies can detect those subtle vibrational differences, they should be able to tell the two molecules apart,
Right.
even though they're chemically almost identical.
And in some of these studies, that's exactly what they found. For example,
Really?
in one study, they used a molecule called acetophenone,
Okay.
which has a fruity smell. When flies had to choose between regular acetophenone and acetophenone with a few deuterium atoms, they basically chose randomly.
Oh, so they lost their preference for the fruity smell.
They lost their preference for the fruity smell.
Interesting. So even a small change in the vibrational frequency messed with their perception of the smell.
Right. But it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
When they used acetophenone with more deuterium atoms, the flies actually avoided it altogether.
Oh, wow.
They could clearly smell the difference, and they didn't like it.
Wow. That seems like pretty strong evidence for Turin's theory.
It's certainly suggestive. But as with all scientific discoveries, we need to be cautious.
Right.
There have been other studies with less clear-cut results. So the debate about Turin's theory is still ongoing.
Well, it definitely seems like there's more to smell than we once thought.
There does.
And who knows, maybe our noses really are using quantum mechanics to sniff out those aromas.
It's a fascinating possibility.
It is.
And it shows how quantum biology is forcing us to rethink some of our most basic assumptions about how life works.
Okay. I think we're ready to dive into the deepest end of the pool now.
Okay.
Human brain and consciousness. This is the part I've been most excited about.
Yeah.
The idea that our minds, our thoughts, our very sense of self could be connected to the quantum world is just mind-blowing.
It's certainly one of the most profound and perplexing mysteries in science. How does the material substance of our brains give rise to the subjective experience of consciousness?
It's a question that has baffled philosophers and scientists for centuries. We have Descartes' idea of the soul as separate from the body, and then modern neuroscience, which tends to view the mind as an emergent property of the brain. But it's still such a huge unknown.
It is.
And here's where quantum mechanics enters the picture.
Okay.
Classical physics, with its deterministic laws of cause and effect, doesn't seem to leave much room for free will or subjective experience. If everything is just a chain reaction of predetermined events, where does the mind fit in?
That's the question.
Right. It's hard to reconcile our everyday experience of making choices, of feeling like we have some control over our actions, with the idea that our brains are just complex biological machines running on a set of predetermined rules. Is that where the concept of the brain as a quantum computer comes in?
Precisely. Quantum computers can tap into the bizarre properties of superposition and entanglement to perform calculations that are impossible for classical computers. And some scientists, like Roger Penrose, believe that the brain might be doing something similar.
I've heard of Penrose. Didn't he propose that consciousness arises from quantum processes?
He did.
Happening in these tiny structures called microtubules inside our neurons?
That's right.
Wow.
He suggests that these microtubules are the sites of quantum computation in the brain, allowing us to experience consciousness in a way that classical physics can't explain.
So it's like our brains are running on quantum algorithms that we don't even fully understand yet.
Yeah.
That's a pretty wild idea. But what do other scientists think about this? Is Penrose's theory widely accepted?
It's highly controversial, to say the least.
Okay.
Many neuroscientists are skeptical,
Yeah.
arguing that there's no evidence for the kind of large-scale quantum coherence that Penrose's theory requires.
And then there's always the decoherence problem, right?
Right.
Wouldn't the warm, noisy environment of the brain destroy those delicate quantum states?
That's a major challenge for any theory that tries to invoke quantum mechanics to explain consciousness.
Right.
How do you maintain those quantum effects long enough for them to have any impact on brain function?
So it sounds like Penrose's theory, while intriguing, is still very much a fringe idea.
It is.
Are there any other theories out there that try to connect quantum mechanics and consciousness?
There are. Some scientists, for instance, are focusing on the brain's electromagnetic field as a potential source of quantum effects. They argue that this field could act as a kind of unifying force, connecting different parts of the brain in a way that classical physics can't fully account for.
So instead of microtubules, it's the electromagnetic field that's the key to consciousness.
It could be.
It's like our thoughts are riding on waves of quantum energy.
It's a fascinating idea.
It is.
And there's some evidence that electromagnetic fields can influence brain activity.
Okay.
But again, we're still in the very early stages of exploring these possibilities.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here.
Hmm.
Lots of incredible ideas, but not a lot of definitive proof.
That's right.
It seems like the more we learn about quantum biology, the more questions we have.
That's the beauty of science.
Yeah.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries of our knowledge.
Right.
And with each new discovery, new mysteries emerge.
Right.
But even if some of these bolder claims about quantum consciousness don't hold up under scrutiny, the exploration of quantum biology has already yielded some amazing insights.
Right. I mean, even if our brains aren't quantum computers, we've seen that enzymes might be using quantum tunneling.
Right.
And that photosynthesis might involve quantum coherence.
Exactly.
Those are groundbreaking discoveries in their own right.
Absolutely. And remember, quantum biology is a young field.
It is.
The technology for studying these effects is constantly evolving.
Right.
So who knows what incredible discoveries await us?
Well, this deep dive has been quite a journey. We've gone from the fundamental question of what defines life to the mind-boggling possibility that our very consciousness might be rooted in the quantum world.
A lot to consider.
It is.
We've explored some of the most cutting-edge research and discussed ideas that are pushing the boundaries of our understanding of life itself.
I think we need another break to let all this sink in. Join us for the final part of our quantum biology adventure, where we'll explore what the future holds for this incredible field and what it all means for our understanding of life in the universe. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the quantum world of biology.
We have.
I feel like we've gone from the subatomic realm to the grand scale of evolution and even the mysteries of consciousness.
Right.
It's been a wild ride.
It really highlights how quantum biology is changing our perspective on life itself. You know, it's not just a collection of chemical reactions, but a delicate dance between the microscopic and the macroscopic, a symphony of quantum processes.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's like life has figured out a way to tap into these hidden layers of reality using quantum mechanics to do things that classical physics just can't explain. But where do we go from here? What does the future hold for quantum biology?
That's the exciting part. We're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible.
Yeah.
As our understanding of these quantum effects grows, the potential applications are limitless.
Okay, give me some specifics.
Yeah.
What are some areas where quantum biology could have a real impact in the years to come?
Well, one area that's particularly promising is medicine. Imagine being able to design drugs that operate at the quantum level, manipulating those subtle processes to achieve incredibly precise therapeutic effects.
So instead of just blocking an enzyme or a receptor,
Right.
we could actually fine-tune its activity
Right.
by controlling those quantum interactions.
Exactly. We could potentially develop therapies that are far more targeted and effective than anything we have today.
That would be a game changer. But what about beyond medicine? Could quantum biology help us tackle some of the big challenges facing humanity,
Absolutely.
like climate change or food security?
Remember how we discussed the incredible efficiency of photosynthesis?
Yeah.
If we could fully understand and harness those quantum processes,
Uh-huh.
we might be able to engineer crops
Okay.
that are far more efficient at capturing sunlight and converting it into energy.
So we could potentially boost agricultural yields and create more sustainable food production systems,
Yeah,
all thanks to a deeper understanding of quantum biology.
it's a real possibility. And then there's the even more radical idea of designing entirely new forms of life.
Okay.
Synthetic organisms tailored to address specific problems like cleaning up pollution or producing biofuels.
That sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does.
But it makes me think about those artificial cells we talked about earlier. The ones that Rachel Armstrong envisions using for her biometric architecture.
Right.
If we want to create truly alive synthetic organisms,
Yeah?
wouldn't they need to be able to harness quantum effects,
Right.
just like natural organisms?
That's a question that's at the forefront of synthetic biology.
It is.
If we truly want to create artificial life,
Yeah.
we might need to embrace the quantum route.
It's mind-boggling to think that we might be on the verge of creating life that's not just modeled on nature, but actually built on the principles of quantum mechanics.
Right.
Like, we're stepping into a whole new era of biology.
It's a truly exciting time to be in this field. And I think the most important takeaway from our deep dive
Yeah.
is that life is far more complex and wondrous than we ever imagined.
It really is.
It's not just a set of static rules, but a dynamic interplay between the quantum world and the macroscopic world, a constant dance of possibilities.
And as we continue to explore this quantum frontier, who knows what other secrets of life we might uncover?
It's hard to say, but it's an exciting prospect.
It is.
Perhaps we'll find that quantum mechanics isn't just a strange quirk of the subatomic world,
Right?
but the very essence of what it means to be alive.
What a thought. Well, this has been an incredible journey. We've gone from tiny enzymes using quantum tunneling to the grand possibility of quantum consciousness.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. It just goes to show that even in the most familiar aspects of life, there are still mysteries waiting to be explored.
Absolutely. And that's what makes science so fascinating.
Yeah.
There's always something new to discover, always another layer to peel back.
So keep asking questions, keep exploring, and never stop being curious about the world around you.
That's great advice.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the quantum heart of life. We hope it sparked your curiosity and left you with a sense of wonder about the incredible possibilities that lie ahead.